welcome for this month's meeting. And I think we will start at least for this month and of course last month and I think the next month while we are seeing, some of us are seeing one another for the first time. So I think some introductions will be quite good for this month and next until we all know one another very well. So I guess, Phil, if you may, would you like to start introducing yourself in a few seconds, or
Phil
in a few
Clarkson.
sentences, and then we will just rotate through through everybody.
Okay, Phil Clarkson. I'm retired now. I'm an emeritus professor at Australian Catholic University and an honorary at University of Melbourne. I've got to get that in since Wei Zhong's here. However, I'm still pottering along, and at least there's a couple of people that wrote chapters in that book that a couple of us edited a few years ago. And I'm still working with a couple of schools out there in school land.
Thanks, Phil. Baba Sensei.
Hello, everybody. My name is Takuya Baba. The name which appears here is not really my name, but the name of the institution. I'm from Hiroshima, Japan, and I have been working with Dr. Shan about 6-7 years ago. So we have been working on the issue of values. So nice meeting you.
Thank you, Baba Sensei. Fatma. Well, Fatma, you're next on the screen from my perspective. So.
Okay. My name is Fatma Nur Aktaş. I'm a research assistant doctor at a university in Turkey. And last year I finished my PhD thesis. And also, thank you so much, Clarkson. And so we studied together in Turkey with Dr. Dede and our team about value in Turkey, and that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Dede.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Yüksel Dede. I am a faculty member of the Department of Mathematics Education, Gazi University in Ankara. I am working at Berlin Freie University in Germany with Alexander von Humboldt Scholarship and Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey in Turkish TÜBİTAK Scholarship respectively. My research interests include especially teaching of mathematical concepts, especially algebraic teaching, teacher education, and effective domain in mathematics education, especially values education, values and belief but in mathematics and international comparative studies. That's enough, okay?
Thank you, thank you. Do you speak German?
Yeah, but I forgot now a little bit because in Turkey I don't speak in German. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I can understand fluently German and speak. Yeah. Good.
Very useful. Pina, you're next on the screen for me. So yeah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I am Pınar. I am a research assistant in Bartın University in Turkey. I am studying belief structures and values with Dede. And I finished my doctorate thesis last year, like Fatma. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vessel.
Hello.
Hi,
I am Veysel Akçakın. Good morning. I am Veysel Akçakın and I am working in Uşak University in Turkey. I am also one of the member of Prof. Dede.
You can see my team. Yeah, sorry. You can see my team.
Yep.
Or, three of
Okay. Sorry.
Vessel, are you still talking? Because we cannot hear you.
You know, I say I am working in Uşak University in Turkey, and I am also one of the member of Prof. Dede. Nice meeting with you.
Thank you. And with some luck, if your application is successful, we will see you in Melbourne next year. Penny.
The late one, huh? Always goes last. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to meet you. I feel like I know you all from somewhere. Other than Wee Tiong and I, who've known each other, I think it's, what have we worked out, Wee Tiong? 22 years now? Just about. So Wee Tiong was my supervisor for my PhD. And when Alan Bishop decided to move back to England, I was adopted by Philip, who's there. So he became my other supervisor, if you like, as I embraced my academic career. And they have been incredible in helping me to develop myself as a researcher. So my interest was all in values, and that's how Wee Tiong and I met. I'm particularly interested in engagement of children in mathematics learning. I'm a mum to a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old. And at this point, my 13-year-old is telling me that he hates mathematics. So that upsets me and worries me incredibly, especially when people know that his mum researches the affective domain of mathematics learning. I'm particularly interested at the moment in how we can use values to support teachers in schools. And what I've been working on is in our professional development program with the department here in Victoria. We've had it incredibly difficult here in Victoria. We've been locked down for 4.5 months. I'm sure you've heard from a lot of people. So we've been trying to work from home and homeschool our children. And I think I go grey by the second, but we only have 1 day left and they're back to school on Monday. So that's great. So what I've actually tried to do is using the Wi-Fi 2 questionnaire, section B, which you probably all know, is I actually gave it to some teachers in Victoria and asked them to fill it in. And then I invited them to, because these teachers are leaders in mathematics at their schools, then I invited them to do it with a colleague that they wanted to help and support at the school and to compare their results together. But then I invited the colleague and the leader to talk about the results from the survey and to ask the colleague to suggest a mathematics learning activity that depicts one of the values that they identified strongly. So one on either extreme. So not one in the middle because it's difficult, but one that they were really passionate about. So for example, if fun was favored over hard work, we would ask the teachers to show us an activity that represents fun. Interestingly, I found that most teachers love to know more about mystery, but that was the hardest value where they could identify an activity. So of course, what do you do as a student? You go back to the supervisor. So Wee Tiong gets messages from me and says, can you help me? I need to identify a values activity that shows mystery. And of course, Wee Tiong from the top of his head started suggesting I looked into golden ratio and Fibonacci numbers, and it was a big hit, Wee Tiong, I didn't get to tell you. So yeah, that's where I'm sitting in, but I'm very passionate about values. I think this is the best way to nurture teachers' strengths in mathematics learning. It's not condescending, it works on their strengths, and it's a very nice way to open up a conversation at the very least, understand why teachers teach in particular ways.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Penny. I think it's also good to hear the update from you as well. And I think you have also mentioned quite rightfully where our last few years of effort has been in our research, which is how to explore and research the role of values in promoting students' performance in maths. And with the pandemic that is kicking in and coming to nearly a year now, I am beginning to see that there is a potential for the other side of our research to actually thrive and to grow, which is how we can actually, through the teaching of maths, promote the teaching of the soft skills and the values, which is now being emphasized by quite many governments and education systems. So I used to talk about maths through values and values through maths. And I think this is where I think it's an opportunity for us to have both developing in full steam. So the teaching of maths through the teaching of values and the promotion of values through the teaching of maths. So you know, for us, if you're thinking of research grants and all that, I think this is a perfect time for us to actually contribute in this post-pandemic kind of program. I'm certainly beginning to hear that from NGOs at UNESCO and World Economic Forum and Asia Society, so on and so forth. We do have apologies today from a few people. Chikara Kinon, who is a Japanese researcher, who's actually leading in at least one study in the Japanese team, and Baba Sensei is leading in 2 of the studies. Jodie Hunter from New Zealand, who should be joining us next month, but she's not possible to join us today. Ralph Ahrens from Germany, with whom I talked about values quite a lot whenever we meet at conferences. He should be able to join us next month as well. And then Xiao Ping from Hong Kong, who has lessons today. But this is the nature of things. With a Zoom meeting and the time zone difference, some people will be left out. And the way I'm trying to negotiate this is to have these meetings on different weekdays, and hopefully, you know, we can attend at least 1 or 2 of those. But as I promised people, we are recording this so that we can distribute this within our circle so that people can catch up. They may hear some of our sharing today, and they may want to get in touch with, for example, with Penny to do a little research and to do a study. So I think that's how we configure these monthly meetings, short as they may be, 1 hour. And at this time, I'm thankful that our Turkish team is joining us. I think it's 8 o'clock in the morning where you are. So thanks for waking up early and making the effort to join us. So I am not sure who is sharing today, so so that we can know roughly how we can plan our time. I think Baba Sensei is doing a bit of an update for us for the Japanese team. I will have a 10-minute sharing as well. Is anyone else sharing anything or any ideas or any new projects or any new readings that you want to share with anyone? Phil, you have one. So I guess we should work out fine. So if we each restrict ourselves to about 10 minutes and then plus a bit of discussions after that before we go on to our next person. So perhaps we'll get Baba Sensei to start first, and then after that followed by Phil, and then I'll do the last one.
Are you enabling me to share the slides?
I think it should be, but let me just check. Okay, give it a try.
So can you see the slides? Okay. Kinone was my former student and who is the head of this project in Japan. Progress report, this slide is made by him, but since he was not able to participate in today's meeting, let me briefly report on this. So this one is a research objective and the same as the other group. This is the spread, how spread our team is from Hokkaido to Kyushu. So we have got many different small team members, which scattered from up north to down south. So we have collected, we have already acquired some funds. So this is a schedule, but because of COVID, even within Japan, it's rather difficult for us to collect the data. So data collection is not well proceeded yet, but at least the one which we have collected last year, we are now struggling how to analyze the data. And just recently we had a meeting, second preparatory meeting we held, and we discussed how we should interpret the data. And later on, I would like to ask a few questions to Shah Sensei or the other member who may have the similar kind of problems. So this is the same, and this is a number of data which we collected. So 817 students we have collected already, and 4 prefectures, and each prefecture has got several teachers. And most of the teachers, since we have to ask the teachers what do they value, so we cannot pick randomly. We pick some of the teachers who can be collaborative with us. So one of the questions actually is how we should select the teachers, because depending upon the selection of the teacher, the result may change. So the criteria of teacher selection is one of the important questions for us. This is a structure of the questionnaire, and we started analyzing this one. Sorry, the result of the data analysis was not included, so maybe next month we may be able to share some of the data result. This is a data collection, and we started analyzing the data. We have made a few presentations already. So this is progress, which we can say, and Kinone, the first person, Kinone, is the team leader. So as I said, we have got several questions while we were discussing the interpretation of the data. First of all, is there a criteria, common criteria of selecting target teachers? In fact, in reality, what we did is we asked the teacher who is close to us. But that one cannot really represent the Japanese teacher or even some prefectural teacher. So how we should interpret the data is one of the huge questions. In fact, Shah Sensei, Australian team or Turkey team or anybody, if you have got some criteria for selecting target teacher, I would like to hear that. The second one is a little bit broad, intention or aim of setting each question item. Maybe each one of them may be too big, but especially some of the questions are related. Suppose, generally speaking, what kind of things do you value, do they value? And now we are limiting you. What do you think? And setting up those general questions and personal questions, what kind of thing do you really want to see? And in fact, we see the phenomena that many of the students, many of the teachers who answered this didn't understand the intention of the question. Maybe we are not very good at explaining, but even teacher said it is confusing or we didn't understand. So they simply answer the same thing. So that one is, I would like to hear the explanation about that. The last two is a little bit broad question. Is there some conceptual framework, common conceptual framework, how to interpret the data, or common procedure, how we can analyze the data? So that's a brief explanation about progress and mainly a lot of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba Sensei. I guess, do you want to show the slides with the questions again so that we can actually
Okay. Let me
refer to those? And I guess I'm not sure whether Yuxil may have some comments to make, because I understand that you are also working on the analysis. Now, for the information of everybody else, the Wi-Fi 2 data, Wi-Fi 2 questionnaire is otherwise also called the values alignment study. So they are the same. Wi-Fi 2 was called Wi-Fi 2 because it was supposed to be a follow-up from the Wi-Fi study. And we realized that the focus of Wi-Fi 2 really is on the values alignment aspect, and that's why it's also otherwise called values alignment study, so that we do not confuse that with the another follow-up of Wi-Fi study that's being conducted in Hong Kong. The analysis, and I think the Turkish team is currently or has just completed the analysis of their data as well. So Professor Dede may have something to share with us. Yuxil.
Yeah, okay, so I didn't hear. Yeah, thank you for Professor Baba. I have a question. I have any question. For example, first question, how do you define value alignment exactly? I think, yeah, this definition, the definition of values alignment is mixed. It's vague, because values alignment questionnaire, when I values alignment questionnaire in section A, what is proposed this section and what is being measured here? Because in this section, for example, section A, first question, I think learning mathematics will help me in my daily life. Second items, mathematics will assist with my learning of other school subjects. These items in this section, more usefulness, relevance, maybe tool, values are determinate. And then other items, for example, my parents think that it is important that I do well in mathematics. My family discuss mathematics at home. You can see, as you can see, these items suddenly determine family support for mathematics learning for students. I wonder, yeah, I want to learn here. Section A related to section B. First question is my second question. For example, I would like a job that involves using mathematics. These items may be taken as an enjoyment value, unlike other items. Also, is there also a relationship between values alignment and well-being, especially with parent support items? We can ask my other question after your answer, or Babaya, Professor Takuya Babaya. Baba, okay.
I think I would have quite interestingly, I will be able to respond to some of the questions that are here when I present my my sharing later, because my sharing today is also on values alignment. So, but in the meantime, anyone else with any comments to make based on your understanding of values alignment?
I feel like you want me to say something here since my PhD was all on values alignment. So one of the things that I look at is in the questionnaire, I think there's some really important questions here that have been presented by you, Professor. And one of them that strikes me is the concept framework as well, is how do we actually analyze this? How do we start to put it together? one of the things when I talk about values alignment and what I found in my PhD study was that when teachers' values align with the student values, we seem to see that engagement prevailed, which means it was more, the children were more engaged. There were some situations where we talk about teachers using their craft to re-engage mathematics classrooms. So, for example, if they're doing a very difficult problem-solving activity and the children are really struggling, there's different strategies that teachers can use to re-engage children. Some of them are pedagogical actions, things like, I'll let you work with a group, or I'll let you work with your friend and you can share ideas and everything. And then some of them are things like, depending on how strong the teacher's value is. So if in that moment, the teacher really wants to nurture that value of hard work, then allowing children to sit in that zone of confusion is common. Where it gets tricky is, where do you continue to allow that before children start to disengage completely and not want to do it anymore? And I don't know, but further, more research could show that. I'm sure it's different depending on children's ages as well. But that's where I'm thinking now. We have proposed some value alignment strategies. We are assuming there are many more than the ones that I just was able to do through my PhD study. They were gathered by watching teachers and watching critical incidents in classrooms, if you like, what would happen at certain times in the classroom, and especially when there was a bit of friction between the teacher and the student, and what outcome became, whether the teacher was able to continue to maintain their value or whether they succumbed to the student's value, which is still the teacher's value, but it all depended on that power struggle of who wanted to hold on to their value more. I don't know if that really helped, Wee Tiong.
No, you do. Thanks. Thanks, Penny. And I think we will benefit in many ways from your thesis findings. So if you have a representative piece of journal article or chapter which you think we can follow up and refer to, send it to me, and then I will send it to everybody, because I think reading your writings will help us to unpack some of the criteria or some of the strategies that teachers use to re-establish or to establish values alignment.
It's really important that you get other people interested in your work, because the latest publication was with Phil and a colleague of mine, James Russo, who didn't know much about values, but when he read my work, he said, well, I'd like to challenge you. I think there's at least one strategy you've overlooked completely, which he calls the beacon strategy. And that's when the student absolutely refuses to do, for example, what the teacher wants, but the teacher maintains the control. So I'll forward that reading and people can have a look at it.
I have the reading, so if you're okay and if you have nominated that, I can share the reading with everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Phil, as long as Phil's okay, I'm sure he is.
Okay, I guess I'll give a quick response to these 5 bullet points before we hear from Phil. So the first response is there any common criteria? No, and I'll explain why when I talk about it later. What is the intention on setting each question item? As Yuxu has mentioned as well, the intention...
Sorry to interrupt, but would it be better if you just went on with your presentation now, since it aligns directly with this? And I'll
yeah. If you're okay, yeah. But since my presentation or my sharing doesn't answer any of the other 4 bullet points, I'll just briefly answer them. The intention of the other items is really to support what the respondents say in regards to the experience with values alignment. So all the other things that we find, their beliefs, their values, are meant to allow us to collect this data and to, as a bit of a post-production analysis, to see if the strategies, their approach might be related to particular values or beliefs that they may hold. So it's more like saying, since we're collecting the data from the students and the teachers, let's also collect this information, especially the data with regards to what they already value. From the whole bank of items which they value, which ones do they use? Which ones are being activated in their values alignment experience? So it's more of providing us with some background information to address the usual issues with questionnaire analysis or questionnaire data collection methods. General and personal, I am beginning to understand how some teachers or some respondents find that it is quite confusing to respond to the same items phrased in the same way, but one asking for general and one asking for personal. So for the benefit of the rest of you, it's like asking the question like, what do you think teachers in general value? And the next question is, what do you think you yourself as a teacher value? So it's that distinction between the respondent's perception of general and the teacher's perception of themselves, their own. We can actually talk about the importance of taking into account both of these when we really do analysis. Perhaps we may just want to make use of the responses to the personal items, especially as Baba Sensei mentioned, if the teachers are writing the same responses anyway to both. Conceptual framework, grounded study, we are actually, there's nobody who have done a values alignment study in education research before. And I think it is up to us, through our analysis, together or individually, to actually set up a conceptual framework. And it's for that reason that we don't have a common procedure addressing the last point of data analysis. The Japanese teams have their own procedure, and they have published papers. And I think the Turkish team is also doing one as well. It'd be good to actually compare what they have done. I have the privilege of listening to what the Japanese team were doing, and I presented one procedure, one proposal, which I presented to Xiaoping in Hong Kong. So once he get back to me, I'll be able to present my take on this as well to the whole group. But eventually, it will be good for us to actually compare our different proposals, different approaches, to see if there is, first of all, if there's a need for common analytical approach. Maybe there is for comparison purposes, but there's no harm also in having a culturally, produced, situated approach that we use for our own data. So we will see how that goes over the next few months, I believe. Yes. Yes, Baba Sensei.
For the last part of your explanation, you used the expression that compare. So that is also a part of our discussion. If we really want to compare our data, shouldn't there be some kind, standardized kind of method or procedures? So if each group do it the analysis in own way, maybe we may not be able to compare the data. That was a kind of discussion which we had among Japanese teams. So that's why we were talking about the common conceptual framework or common procedure in order for us to compare.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's what we did for our Wi-Fi study, where we have a common analysis, and that's why we actually could compare across the cultures. Perhaps one way we can actually do this is for Kinone Sensei to maybe present the Japanese approach, or to share with us any of their publications. And then I'm not sure how developed and how advanced our Turkish team's analysis is. Maybe they can actually look at it and shape this. And we can also benefit as well. When Xiaoping comes back to me with his feedback, I can also shape my analytical approach to take into account the Japanese approach and perhaps the Turkish approach.
Thank you.
And to the extent that we have a common analytical approach, we will look at comparisons later on as well.
Thank you very
because
much.
I do not want to also undervalue or not value the sort of work that some of our teams have already put in coming up with an analytical framework. So I think at this stage, some sharing of this framework will be useful before the other teams started to analyze their own data. Yeah. So, so if Kinone Sensei can share with us 1 or 2 journal articles or readings over the next few days, I'll distribute it amongst the groups so that we can actually all look at it. Yeah.
I will convey a message to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wee Tiong, since you're still talking about readings, one of my favorite readings was from you on values alignment. It's a little bit of an older one, 2015. You might want to share that one around too, from the diversity book that we'd written in. You give some really nice case studies of different values playing and how one can be prioritized over another, and one can't assume a value because of the way things happen. You have to look closely at the way a person acts to understand.
Okay, thanks, Penny. I will include that in the circulation as well. It's always good to have people who are still, who are still reading a lot and who knows the literature very well. Okay, so here is my share. Are you all able to see it? Okay, so now this is my bit of sharing. In the context of this is I'm just thinking of just generating some ideas for a grant application. I have not identified any grants or any particular collaborator for this, but I'm just generating some ideas, and the intention is to make use of this platform that we have today to look at perhaps some feedback and some ideas about how to improve this further. So tentatively, I'm calling this effective maths teachers orchestrating values alignment. It may look similar to the Wi-Fi 2 study, and in fact, you will see that it is an extension of that. And I will, if that is not clear to you, let me know, because it should be clear how this is distinctive from the Wi-Fi 2 study. So, of course, the background of the context is that when people get together to interact in the classroom or as a team or in the office, as we know, everybody brings their own personal values to bear. And through these interactions, there will always be values coming together. And some of these will be different, some of these will be in conflict, and some of these will be of course, aligned and similar. But with a teacher and his or her 25 students or even more, there's never a guarantee. And as Xiaoping mentioned in the last session that we have, it's not just the teacher and the students. There's always this third factor, which is the curriculum or the institution or the schools. The curriculum have their own implicit values. The principals have their own values. The curriculum have their own values. So the teachers will somehow need to actually work through this. So my assumption has always been that when a teacher comes into the classroom, there has always been a need for the teacher to orchestrate the different values that are espoused in the classroom so that the lesson can proceed, so that lessons can proceed, the chapters can be taught, the students can learn, the teachers can teach. And the reason why I'm focusing on effective teachers is the assumption, and so this will be the assumption, which is that the effective teachers somehow are able to do this orchestration very well, whichever sort of classroom they are being dropped into, whichever sort of class that they're teaching. This compared to some other teachers who might be especially effective when teaching the gifted T students, or be particularly effective teaching another type of subgroup of students, but when they are given different types of students, their effectiveness may be affected. So I'm looking for effective teachers who somehow can be sent to any maths class, so to speak, and do the job well. So that's an assumption. So we'll come back to this thing about effective teachers later. So the objective of the study is, first of all, what does values alignment look like? And of course, drawing upon Penny's thesis as a start. But do all classrooms look that way? After all, we were only looking at Australian classrooms. So what does values alignment look like in different places, in different cultures? And how do effective teachers orchestrate these different values in the maths classroom? So, so these are the research questions. First of all, what does values alignment look like for effective teachers of 13 to 16-year-old students in Australia and USA? The USA is just a placeholder. It can be any country or it can be any other countries. And number two, what strategies do these effective math teachers deploy and use or adopt to achieve values alignment? So the question is, effective teachers, who are they? There are, of course, different definitions of effective teachers. There are definitions and the definitions. And no one definition of effective teachers, including the ones from NCTM, will apply everywhere or is meaningful in different cultural settings in the first instance. So, we, at the same time, we should also be reminded that all teachers negotiate the different values which are espoused in the classroom anyway. So all teachers will have to, otherwise the classroom, the lessons will never proceed. So really the reason for focusing, if you like, on effective teachers is simply an attempt to create a situation in which the data collection for this study is efficient. And what I mean is that it's efficient in the sense that the data that's collected are richer with more critical incidents of successful attempts at values alignment. So it doesn't really matter if we agree on any definition of effective teachers in a way. So, so in this regard, we believe that we can simply say to the schools that they can nominate any maths teachers whom they consider to be effective in the sense that they are good at, they're doing a good job at getting the job done. They're doing a good job at maths teaching. This may or may not imply that any particular teacher participant is necessarily good at producing students with excellent exam scores. So need not be the case. So in other words, effective teachers will be as they are defined by the school when they do the nomination. This will be in line with David Clark's LPS studies in the choice of effective classrooms. And at the same time, also, I feel that by stressing and emphasizing effective teachers, it will have a feel-good kind of atmosphere in that these teachers, participants know that their skill, their expertise is being recognized, and that's why they are being nominated. So hopefully, as well, this will increase their participation and their involvement and engagement in the study. Now, so let's come back to this whole idea about values alignment. What are we actually talking about in terms of definition? Now, one definition that is available in the literature, and even this is not a math education literature, and so far nobody has done any research on values alignment in math education yet. Branson's definition talks about values alignment being an ongoing process. It's ongoing, and in a classroom it's ongoing. It's never complete. You never know with every lesson what critical incidents you're going to get, what incidents they're going to get, what your students are going to say to you or do to you. So so therefore, it's an ongoing process of building a cohesive culture in which there's a fit between the personal values and the values of the organization. Now, this is a definition, and I think some of you will immediately see that this is a bit problematic because this view reflects a development of a common set of values that are being embraced by everybody concerned in the organization. So in this case, the classroom. So this implies that the teacher and the students will share the same values as a product or as an outcome of values alignment. Now, in a math classroom where you have 25 to 40 or 60 students, this expectation is going to a big ask. This expectation that all students subscribe to a common set of values is going to be elusive in practice and in theory too. So, so I started thinking that there are likely other ways of achieving this fit between the values of the institution, of the teacher, and of the students. And if you look at Branson's work, and again, I'll share that document around, the journal article around with everybody. If you look at his example really is how the employees of the organization should all be trained to adopt the same values as the CEO or as the boss. That is not going to be easy in a classroom. So there's another one, Chippendale, who is now doing a consultancy company with values. Again, not in education, but more of advising companies. Values alignment to him is an emergent property in organizations, which includes schools in his view. That has a critical mass of people with a common language of values and clarity about how their own values align with the desired values and goals of the organization. Now, this is much more meaningful, I guess, because the emphasis here is not about everybody sharing or learning to have the same values. The emphasis here is about how your personal values, as you can see in the third line, is aligned with the desired values of the organization. So it could be school values, it could be teacher values. And the picture here I have of all the different fishes swimming together has that shared meaning, has that meaning as well, where the fishes may be of different sizes, but they are all swimming in the same direction, towards the same goals, towards the same purpose. And in so doing, they get strength from doing that, and they become big fish altogether. But on their own, they still have their own identity. On their own, they still have their own personal values. So working along Chippendale's work, looking at how to actually come across how to achieve this values alignment, his proposition is that the key to this is that everybody should have clarity about their own values, and this is important. This does not mean that we need to map all the values that everybody has, which we did in Wi-Fi 2. The thing here, the emphasis here is that everybody needs to have the clarity about their own values, not clarity of their values. And therefore, from what I've gathered from the reading this, is that as long as we are able to analyze values differences or values conflicts, as long as we are able to get the participants to talk about what values they bring to their situation and interactions and how they give in, how they adapt, that will be all, without the need to actually map the values of the people in the first instance. So it is with this that I tested out with this values alignment study or Wi-Fi 2, when I actually do a bit of an initial analysis of the Australian data. Now, by initial analysis is nowhere as organized as the one that the Japanese and our Turkish team have done, but just simply looking through and running through NVivo to see what kind of themes come out. And it does indicate to me that this, through this initial analysis, that just by focusing on what the teachers and the students say about what they do when their values are in conflict or in difference with one another, it's give us an idea of how they go about trying to attain or trying to achieve values alignment without the need to actually measure or list all the values that the teachers and the students have. So that's promising, and in that regard, I'm thinking of doing this study or this new project, looking at secondary school teachers who are seen to be effective by the school principals, government schools versus non-government schools, gender, male, female, teaching experience, less than 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and more than 10 years. So if you look at 2 times 2 times 3, we are looking at multiples of 12 per country. So 12 per cultural setting. So initially, you can look at this 12, and the video data that, the data source that I'm thinking about is through the collection of a series of encounters or lessons that these teachers undergo. If it is true that every teacher in every lesson encounters 50 to 100 critical incidents in a 1-hour lesson, then asking the teachers to video record 6 lessons, 2 consecutive ones at the beginning of the term, 2 consecutive ones in the middle of the term, and 2 consecutive ones at the end of the term, followed by, each of which is followed by an interview, and through which during the interview, we get the teachers to play back the videos of the lesson that they've just taught, and to pause. It's not a new skill, of course. Phil knows this skill very well. To pause at the time when they remembered that this is a moment of a value conflict, and then getting the teachers to talk about what you did then, what did you give in, why. So through this interview data, we hope to be able to map out the strategies that teachers use to achieve the values alignment or not. They may not succeed, they may not always succeed. And that's why by looking and by tapping on effective teachers, we are hoping that this video data will have many, many more instances of success that are being displayed by these teachers. So, so that we can actually map out what are the strategies that they use. So basically, this is what I'm thinking of, but I'm definitely happy to hear from you your ideas and your thoughts. Okay. Questions and ideas?
I'd make a couple of comments, Wei Zhong. Effective teaching, you're absolutely right. There's, that notion has been around for a long time, and getting the getting principals is to nominate. That's fine. I wonder whether there's a possibility of also getting someone outside of the school as a second check, someone who should know. I remember back in the days when there used to be inspectors around in Victorian schools, you always went to the local inspector and said, we've got these teachers, often it was the reverse. Is there anything wrong with them? But it's just a second check, which I think, in papers, it sort of takes it out of the school, and someone else is saying that's a good teacher. And that might be something. I like the idea about fit and alignment not necessarily being identical. The image I got when you were talking, because I've been playing with my grandkids, doing a lot of Lego when we've been in shutdown, and I can tell you kids that are 5 years old and 6 years old are absolutely terrific at Lego. But, when you get moving parts with gears, you can have one gear here, one gear here. It's different color, different size, and yet they can mesh. And so the whole thing works. So yes, it doesn't have to be identical, but as long as they mesh together in the moment, that's the critical thing. So that was, just emphasizing what you said there. I guess the other thing is the goal. Sometimes we get hung up with the goal, and the goal seems to have become a very permanent sort of thing. But in these sorts of studies, goals can be, a goal for a lesson might link again to an overall goal, but it might be a bit ethereal. It might not be a real permanent something that's sort of set in stone. And that's an interesting idea itself. Anyway, yeah, good luck.
Thanks. Yep, I was muted. Thanks, and hi, welcome, Roseanne.
Yeah, sorry.
You to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I want to interrupt your speech. Yeah, as my character, we always need to see my front clearly. Maybe because we are a mathematician. I want to ask some question for this here. Yeah, for this, I want to invite how you collect and analyze data of Wi-Fi 2 instrument. Firstly, you should determine the values of students. Then you determine the values of teacher or their teachers. And then did you compare these data in terms of similarities and differences? Or have you determined the students and their values in the age of the students as like section B in the Wi-Fi 2 instrument? For example, section B in the Wi-Fi 2 instrument only ask about values throughout the age of students. Yeah.
Oh, a quick answer
okay.
to
Did you understand?
data.
Do you understand?
Can you hear me?
Do you understand my question? Sorry.
I hope I do. So through my reply, you can tell me whether I've understood. Basically, the data that I've collected is the same instrument that Baba Sensei and you have used, which is the Wi-Fi 2 questionnaire. We have not formally analyzed the Australian data. So when I talk about initial analysis, it's just really an initial first run through, cleaning up the data, looking at what the students and the teachers were saying. And it's just showing me that it is possible to actually get a sense of how the students perceive and how the teachers perceive the values alignment in practice. Now, Wi-Fi 2 is different from this new one that I'm thinking about because Wi-Fi 2 is self-reporting. Wi-Fi 2 is hypothetical. It's about the teachers and the students trying to remember situations in class where there's value conflicts and value differences. Now, this new one that I just shared with everybody is requiring the teacher participants to videotape the lessons in progress and what they actually do in response to the value differences.
Okay, thank you.
Now, of course, we will carry on with these discussions after this in one way or another through emails and all that. I am conscious of time, so I think before we go, I would like Phil to do his sharing with us. And of course, if you need to go at past, which is now, feel free to. But for those of you who can stay behind, feel free to stay behind, and in any way, I will make the entire video recording available to everyone as well. So Phil, over to you.
All right, well, look, very briefly, I just thought I'd reflect on a study that we did last year, towards the end of last year, and we were going to report it at ICME this year, except we didn't because ICME didn't happen. We were working with just one school who'd become interested in the values that they were teaching, and they'd muddled around for quite some time trying to work out what they wanted to do. And what they decided, and I keep on emphasizing it was their decision, because I was trying to keep a very light hand on what was going on, not trying to run a research project and telling them what to do. And they decided they'd start by, and I guess to add a little bit more context, it was a mixed staff in a secondary school. There was about 15 teachers in the faculty. A number of them were teaching out of field. They would have been much preferring to teach their chemistry or their geography or whatever, only about half of the staff were actually considering themselves, first of all, as maths teachers. So it was a real mixed bag. But the head of the faculty got them to consider what do we as a maths faculty want to value in maths classrooms. And they went through a whole process of getting into small groups, having a lot of discussion about what this meant for them. And they came up with about 42 values, which is a hell of a lot. And then they tiered them in 5 different levels. And we, in our analysis of it, I helped with some of the analysis, we isolated out about 11 values that seemed to be up the top. One of the interesting things to me was there was only about 1 value that I could see that actually had to do with mathematics, and that was rationality in Allen's sorts of terms. There was a lot of personal things, including, for instance, kindness, honesty. There was also about the skills of mathematics, which is fair enough, but you know, the sort of basic notions of what mathematics is just seem to be not considered very much at all, even by the teachers that considered themselves as the maths teachers. Then they did another very interesting thing. They decided they were giving a big survey, as often happens to students in years 7 and 8. That's the first 2 years of secondary school. And one of the things they included last year was, what do you think the values are that your maths teacher holds? I'm sort of, can't quite remember the exact wording now, but essentially what were the values your maths teacher holds when they're teaching mathematics in the classroom? So it wasn't asking the students to say what their maths values were, it was asking them what their perceptions of the values of the teachers were when they were doing mathematics. There was a whole lot of values that obviously came out. There was something like 400 kids that answered this survey. The startling thing was there was just hardly any overlap between the values that the kids thought that the teachers were on about and what the teachers had decided they wanted to value in the classroom. Now, there might be a bit of time just to position here. The teachers may have been turning over a new leaf and going to start teaching different sorts of values from that point on, but I don't think so. I think actually the values that they were reflected in that initial discussion were the values that they'd been holding and would continue to hold firm for a long time. We know from past studies that actually it's very difficult to get teachers to change their values. But the real thing, and the thing that we were about to enter into great discussion at the beginning of this year was this dissociation of alignment between the teachers and the students, and then what do? And then the virus hit. So we haven't done anything. Most of the teachers have been trying to learn how to teach remotely online. Nevertheless, it's a wonderful question for that school to consider, and what are they going to do about it? And that, of course, hopefully will happen next year. But I thought it was a real fascinating, very micro study, a very naturalistic study. I think it showed 2 things, that kids know a lot about their teachers, and they can perceive what is going on, and that, of course, a lot of the values studies assume that. I think it's absolutely right. I think the discontinuity between them is an issue that hopefully the school will take very seriously. But it's also, I think, a lovely little study that the teachers themselves developed. And I think it's enriched their teaching lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the sharing. Will you be presenting this next year at IGME again?
Well, maybe. Being a retired gentleman, I've got to save up for this now. Yeah, hopefully we'll get there, but we'll see.
Yeah. Any comments from anyone? Of course, I'm very amazed, or well, I shouldn't say amazed. I'm very impressed by the fact that what the students perceive and what the teachers report is different. And that is something, of course, that is worth discussing over the next hour or so. There's enough to be discussed there, but I thought I'll just open up to anyone else. Perhaps this question of, can we actually measure or map the sort of things that we value, or is it more reliable for someone else to actually try to measure what you value? And of course, Pina, you are into beliefs, and do you see that beliefs can be met? What does the literature in the beliefs area talked about? Is it possible to map all the beliefs that are related to a particular area for a particular individual?
I think no. Yeah, I'm sorry for my English.
No worries.
We can't, I think we can't know everyone's beliefs about mathematics particularly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering too, whether if we actually get the students and the teachers to actually keep the questionnaire with them over a 1 month or 2 month period, and over time they through observations they can fine-tune their list of values of what they think or what they see in the teachers. Whether we can actually get some agreement between what the students and the teachers see themselves. I don't know, but you know, this whole thing, there's always this challenge of a cross-sectional observation of data compared to longitudinal.
Oh, I think that's a methodological issue that you know, we've been thinking about for the last 25, 30 years. How much store can you put on that? I've sometimes wondered whether, you know, getting the kids or sending the kids text messages and the teacher text messages from time to time and getting them to reply instantly during the course of lessons might be interesting thing to do. But, you know, I really think that sort of deep involvement of researcher with a couple of classes also benefits as well.
Yeah.
Once you start to get the feel of really what's going on, that can prove to be very rich.
The collection of data using text messages or WhatsApp messages and social media can be quite useful and powerful,
yeah,
as well.
I don't think we've explored that enough at all.
No, not at all.
I mean, I think about Wee Tiong is a lot of maths teachers now who are teaching online, and when we were providing professional development here in Australia, the chat is a source of data, just teachers typing questions, replying to each other. Even that itself is such valuable data.
If I can interrupt, you've just reminded me, Penny, of something else that a teacher said to me that I was having a phone conversation with, was some of her students were saying that the actual chat between the students, because they actually had to think about it and write it down, the recipient students found it far more enriching than the sort of verbal chat that goes on in classes. And I suspect that was because of that. Well, what I'm doing, I've got to actually think about what I'm typing. And I think that might be something that would be, again, very enriching to get hold of. But again, how you get hold of it with ethics issues and so on, I'm not quite sure.
One last thing, because I know we're trying to get conscious of time, but one thing that COVID-19 in Victoria has revealed to me as a parent is watching my 13-year-old teenager who grunts at me at the moment, doesn't speak much, but when I say something to him.
Boy.
Yeah, boy, 13-year-old boy. One of the things I've noticed with him, though, is every lesson, him and his close friends in class would develop a Teams meeting in, I don't even know which platform they were using. It wasn't related to the school one. So as soon as the teacher would stop and say, okay, guys, you're on your own, bang, they were all on that, helping each other. And I thought, that to me strikes that group work is still favoured in these young teenagers. That was revealing to me, for example, that and in a year 7, which is the first year of high school, for those of you, I don't know if I would have assumed that, but yet the boys were thriving in these situations, not grunting to each other.
Bad luck, Mum. That's about 15 minutes over time, Wujong.
Any other comments or questions from anyone? Now we have Hui Min and Roseanne joining in. I think Roseanne missed the time zone difference. Australia, we move ahead 1 hour this week. This is not the first time. This week I've got a few visitors on Zoom who missed the 1 hour. So not to worry at all. So do you want to introduce yourself to us, Roseanne?
Aloha, it's good to see you again, Penelope. So my name is Roxanne Moore. I'm in Hawaii. I'm a former middle and high school math teacher here. And Phil, as you mentioned, I actually was going to have the opportunity to do the data collection back at my school with my fellow teachers. However, last year, for political reasons, the entire math department quit, having to do with union issues and the board. And then this fall, we are not in any face-to-face classes. And actually, Hawaii has opted for distance learning entirely, so that teachers are not actually teaching any content. And the curriculum is actually, although I haven't seen the secondary math curriculum, I've seen some of the other subjects and elementary, and it's not rigorous at all. And there are actually a lot of issues with racist and sexist content. So it's a big controversy right now between our Board of Education, our teachers union, and the Department of Education here. So I will probably be reorienting my values dissertation project to talk just at the teacher level. So I won't be able to do the observations and talk to the students much.
This is a very difficult time for many PhD students whose research design sometimes has to be thrown out the window because of the disruptions. And of course, thanks for introducing yourself to us, Roseanne. Hui Min is another PhD student in Hong Kong. Hui Min, do you want to introduce yourself to the rest?
Hi, I'm Hui Min. I'm from Malaysia, currently in the Education University of Hong Kong. Currently, I'm preparing my proposal. Yeah, I think having a kind of like the design that I thinking to do like before I started my PhD, and right now it's like kind of like we need to think about if we're not able to observe the lessons, then what we're going to do with it. Yeah. So yeah, still try to figure out how to handle the situation, because actually my aiming is that I hope to get to interview with students and the teachers, of course, but then I hope to collect more data on the student perspective, like talk to them through like one-to-one interview. So so that to kind of like make the data richer. So it's like, besides lesson observation, what else we can do? Yeah, right now still thinking about that. Hopefully can come up with some like additional data so that we can have a more complete picture about the study. Yeah, that's all.
Well, welcome to the gang, Hui Min. Hui Min is currently being supervised by Qiao Ping, who's of course leading the Hong Kong team. And lucky for you, you're just designing the research methodology, so you still can actually play around with ideas. One-to-one interviews can certainly be done over Zoom with students and teachers. So I'm sure Qiao Ping will be able to guide you there.